Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming to A Taste of Success, Renewable Energy today. My name is Michael Cruz. I work at SuccessWorks as the Alumni Relations Coordinator, and I'll be moderating our panel today. We have three distinguished alumni guests who will be speaking about their careers and sharing some advice for students interested in similar career paths. Just a reminder to students on the call, we'll have lots of time for a Q&A. So as our alumni are getting you acquainted with their backgrounds, feel free to think about questions. You can put your questions in the chat, or you can raise your hand and ask them on the microphone. So before we get to that, we will let our alumni introduce themselves. So we'll just ask the three of you to give a brief intro of your career path and share some info about your current work before we get to the questions. So I think we'll get started, and I will ask James to go ahead and kick us off. Tell us about yourself, James.
Hi, yeah. So my name is James. I graduated in 2014. Maybe I'll start from where I am today and kind of go backwards. I currently now work for a company called Fluence. We're kind of a technology and services provider building grid scale energy storage. I currently sit in our procurement team, dealing with the intersection of the technical and commercial battery terms, with kind of for the key component of large lithium-ion battery systems. Before that, I was part of our sales and policy team, where I really focused on opening up new markets for energy storage and helping utility and independent power producers around the world with their decision to buy storage. And then before that, I worked at a company called the Brattle Group, where I was doing really detailed modeling of electric power grids, so kind of hourly and sub-hourly models, looking at how each plant would dispatch, say in Texas in a cold weather event, for something recently of the types of modeling that I was doing. And then before that, I think I had an internship at Wisconsin when I went to UW-Madison with Cargill on the team that bought hogs for Cargill in their meat processing business, and so I did work on kind of pricing structures there.
All right, I'll go next. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Michael Vickerman. I graduated from UW in 1978 with a BA in history and art history. I find myself now, 42 years later, as policy director for Renew Wisconsin, an organization I've been associated with, worked for almost 30 years. Renew Wisconsin is an education and advocacy organization that promotes policies and practices that lead to more renewable energy development and use in the state of Wisconsin. Our focus is strictly state-based. As a policy director, it means a pretty substantial interaction with electric utilities. And utilities are a regulated enterprise, and the regulator in Wisconsin is called the Public Service Commission. So I spend much of my time interacting with the commission, interacting with utilities. Any kind of power plant they wish to bring onto the grid, any kind of new service that they provide to their customers has to be reviewed and approved by the Public Service Commission. I'm happy to report that our organization is now numbering almost 10 people on our staff. For many years, I was the executive director of Renew Wisconsin, but then we had a staff of either myself and one other person. And I'm much happier being with a team, working in a field that is ripening by the day. And so, yes, I started at Renew in 1991. Before that, I had a pretty sort of pinball-like journey to where to working for Renew. I was a trade newspaper editor. I was a political organizer. I did lots of odd jobs in New York in various word processing houses. But so that's my story for now.
Great, thank you. And last but not least, Sam, I'll turn it over to you.
Hey everyone, I'm Sam Dunaiski. I graduated from UW in 2005. I studied atmospheric and oceanic sciences, and for around a decade, off and on, I worked for a few different private meteorological firms that did forecasts for various different clients. We did forecasts, depending on which company I was at, with, we did forecasts for utilities, we did forecasts for construction companies, golf courses even, and some insurance companies as well. And most of that work I did in the Twin Cities. And then about 4 years ago, I moved to Wisconsin here with my family back to Madison, and was trying to switch careers. The work I did in meteorology was great. I still love weather, but I wanted to do a little bit more. I'd always had a little bit of a climate focus in school, and I wanted to do more to work on climate change and mitigating climate change. And I got thankfully into the renewable energy sector because in my opinion, that was the area where we could make the most gains. And now I work with Michael here at Renew Wisconsin. I kind of do, certainly not the exact opposite from Michael, but I work on renewable energy on scales at a much smaller level. So I am our distributed renewable energy program director. So I work on our solar programs, and a lot of that involves things as simple as, you know, helping homeowners, helping nonprofits, helping businesses get solar, you know, on their rooftops or on their facilities in some degree. And I'm also starting to work on some policy issues regarding sort of what we call behind the meter solar, or much smaller than utility scale installations. And super excited to be doing what I'm doing now, and super excited, as Michael said, to be part of this team, and look forward to all of your questions. So thanks for having me.
Great, thank you. Thank you, all three of you, for giving that overview. I'd like to encourage students to think about questions you might like to ask. Once again, you can put it in the chat. You can raise your hand and we'll call on you. But I'll get us started. So I want to know about, from all of you, how did you know sort of where to start looking for work in this field? Or maybe if you didn't know, how did you learn about what possibilities there are? Thinking about students who maybe don't know where to even start looking for work in the renewable energy sector. And anyone can get started.
Well, I'll take a crack at it. There really wasn't a renewable energy field 30 years ago. I answered an ad in the newspaper. That's how I started work at Renew Wisconsin. So, I mean, in the early days, I'd say first 10, 12 years, we were very much on the margins, or if not outright in the wilderness. And however, one thing I did learn in the early days is that there is a UW program that cultivates graduate students to enter the energy field, including renewable energy. It's called the Energy Analysis and Policy Program. And quite a number of our interns over the years have come through that program. I'm not sure where it is administered. I think, I'm not sure which the lead department is, but it has produced quite a number of talented and now experienced people, and it seems to be growing. So you have that going for you in 2021, which I didn't have back in 1990. Success in large part was just being able to hang on to my job and generate enough income so I would stay on it or stay with it. It only really in the last, I'd say, 6 years has the pace of change accelerated to the point where it is now a field. People do want to jump into renewable energy as soon as they graduate from college. And I think between the EAP program and others like it, and the extensive numbers of nonprofit organizations here in Madison that are working on some facet of energy policy or energy, the business side of energy. I think you're in pretty good shape for finding an introduction to that field.
I can maybe go next. I would say I ended up in the renewable energy space a little bit by accident. So, when I was planning to, I got my internship at Cargill, mostly on what I would describe as the spray and pray approach of applying to a bunch of different positions and waiting till I got one, regardless of how qualified it might seem. My background is in economics, but the team I joined was really was at Wisconsin really to recruit somebody to procure. To kind of live in the fields of Wisconsin and procure dairy cows for beef processing. And then, I applied for a different position. They interviewed me while I was here, and then kind of got there and, really started kind of focusing on what I'm interested in, which is like how prices are formed and really on price formation. And then, when I was offered a job to return to Cargill after my internship, but I was kind of looking at companies that were doing on-campus recruiting, and, again, used what I would call the spray and pray approach. I applied to Brattle, where I ended up working, jobs at Target, KPMG, and a lot of the other kind of typical names you hear recruiting at Wisconsin. And then I ended up at the Brattle Group kind of because energy sounded cool. I had a little commodity background in agriculture and wanted to learn a little bit more about that. So then I ended up at Brattle, and kind of there I got really deep in kind of electricity market modeling. And, it's increasingly becoming less of a modeling exercise and more of a deployment exercise in clean energy. And so there I kind of got my chops in the modeling side of the house. How does this work? How does these interact with the big electricity system operators? How can renewables interact with the grids? And those types of things. And then kind of from there, I was the analyst program at Brattle is typically a 3-year program. And I think from there, I was kind of pretty interested in getting into some facet of clean energy, particularly around kind of solar and wind or storage. And so I was applying for a bunch of different jobs, and I kind of found one with at the time it was a AES Energy Storage, which is part of a big kind of utility holding company based in Arlington, Virginia, but also owns kind of Dayton Power and Light and Indianapolis Power and Light in the Midwest, and accepted a job there kind of working on some of the policy stuff and working with folks like Michael in kind of regional policy stuff, and then kind of from there transitioned into my current role in procurement. So I guess my advice would be that one of the ways you'll often get jobs is experiences you have in whatever job you have, regardless of how directly related it was. When I worked at Cargill, I got some price modeling expertise that I was able to leverage and talk about in my interviews at Brattle. And then Brattle, I got, backgrounds in, electricity market modeling that I was able to leverage in my new companies. So, I think, where we sit, the electricity industry, the clean energy industry is very quickly becoming a jobs kind of environment where there's lots of different skill sets and that are going to be needed. It's, for a long time, there were a few engineers needed, and now you need more engineers than policy people, when you used to need more policy people than engineers, thanks to the great work by, Michael and other folks. And so whether it's engineers, it's salespeople, it's project developers, or lots of different roles you'd have at any kind of big company. At the end of the day, these big construction projects, which require a bunch of different skill sets to succeed.
Yeah, and I feel like in some ways I share a lot of the same stories here as everybody else. I just kept plugging away at it and looking for, I didn't know, honestly, I didn't even know Renew Wisconsin existed when I first moved to Madison, and I just kept trying to plug myself into different areas of the community. I had said that I wanted to, work on climate change, and climate was something that I knew a lot about coming out of school, saw about in the day-to-day realm when I was operational meteorologist. The company that I worked for, we did weather forecasts for clients all over, essentially from the Rockies to the Great Lakes, and from Canada down to about North Texas or Oklahoma and Kansas area. So it's a really big area. We saw a lot of weather every single day, right? And especially this time of year. There was one day I remember we one of our clients in eastern Colorado had a tornado that was about to hit their town, and the next observation site over was reporting a blizzard. And at that point, I decided, okay, that it's time to try something else at this point, because we can't continue to go on this way. So I was really interested in climate and tried to get myself into that realm. I quickly learned that a lot of those positions that really doesn't exist anywhere as a position, a paying position. So, like Michael, I tried to figure out how to put food on the table, right? How to bring money in, and I just kept volunteering with different organizations, different at city level, at county level, all sorts of different organizations, and eventually was lucky enough to come across my current employer, and just kept making myself almost indispensable for that, and that's how I ended up here. So, like my colleagues here, similar paths, but or I guess similar endpoints, but definitely different paths to be getting there.
Great, thank you all. And I see James has put some resources in the chat. Do you want to say a little more about that website?
Yeah, I mean, so the WRISE is kind of a women in renewable energy kind of group. That's, their main goal is kind of getting, as a networking location for women in renewable energy. I'm not directly involved with it, but I have some colleagues who are, and they've got a job board there where they're posting jobs. I mean, I think that they're specifically looking to recruit women, but I think if you look at the job board, you'll see, and the members of that group, you'll see kind of people involved in the renewable energy space. And I think having a company's a target list of if you're trying to go doing some research on the company, creating a target list and kind of going after them more organically can be effective as well.